Shalom and welcome, friends, to Gush Etzion, Yom Yerushalayim Sameach. I'm standing here at the Alon HaBoded, the Lone Oak. The Lone Oak, as you'll learn in just a few minutes, was a symbol of hope, return, unity, and togetherness. Our Torah stones, Yeshivat Darkaynu and Midrashet Darkaynu are for everyone, for those searching for belonging, for those looking for togetherness, for those looking for a place that celebrates unity and diversity, but not uniformity. That's what Yeshivat Darkaynu and Midrashet Darkaynu are. We appreciate you joining us here today in Gush Etzion. We know that you'll enjoy a fantastic tour of the Gush, and we hope that you'll take advantage of the donate links that are pinned. Supporting our work is supporting our students, their families, their communities, and indeed all of Am Yisrael. This event pays special tribute to a dear student of ours, Saadya Ehrenpreis, Zichrono Livracha. Saadya was a member of the first cohort of Yeshivat Darkaynu and stayed with us for 4 years. As he said so beautifully at this year's Or Torah Stone dinner, being in yeshiva really changed my life. Saadya, your being in our yeshiva really changed our lives for the better. We know that as a person, you are someone who strived to bring people together. That's all you ever wanted, that's all you ever worked for, was bringing people together, making sure that everybody was happy with one another. And on this, what would have been your 36th birthday, Yom Yerushalayim, we dedicate this event, this tour, this togetherness to your memory and your legacy. Yehi Zichrecha Baruch. It's my honor to invite Rabbi Dr. Kenneth Brander, President and Rosh HaYeshiva of Or Torah Stone, to welcome us with some Divrei Bracha.
Yom Yerushalayim Sameach. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank Steve and Avi for putting together this wonderful program. It's really exciting that we're doing this. Yerushalayim, Ki'ir Shechubra La Yachtav, Yerushalayim that brings us together as a people, irrespective of our backgrounds. That is truly the message of Darkaynu. Despite any physical limitations, Darkaynu celebrates the fact that our young men and our young women can engage and have a year or two abroad in Medinat Yisrael. Darkaynu celebrates the message of Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim, Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim. Ask about the peace of Yerushalayim. Be concerned about Yerushalayim because it's the heart of our people. Saadya, a blessed memory, Saadya Zal, understood that message. He always asked about the peace of others. Saadya, who was born on Yom Yerushalayim, embodied the spirit of Yerushalayim, understood the idea that we are shalem, we are whole, when we care about others. Enjoy your time with Avi and Steve. You're going to have an amazing experience. Chag Sameach.
Yom Yerushalayim Sameach. Guys, we're now moving into the Gush Etzion. Yerushalayim's behind us. This is the military checkpoint between Jerusalem and the Gush Etzion. The Gush Etzion just south of Yerushalayim. Welcome. Guys, behind us is the tunnels. This is called the Tunnel Highway, road number 60. I call this the holiest highway in the world. We're traveling towards Hebron, which is the second holiest city in Israel. There are 4 holy cities. Number 1 is Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, behind us. In front of us is Hebron, that's number 2. Number 3 is Tzfat. Number 4, Tiberias. Those are the 4 holy cities in Israel. This highway connects the 2 of those cities. On our left-hand side is Beit Lechem. Beit Lechem is very important for the Jewish people in ancient times for 2 reasons. Number 1, our foremother, Rachel Imeinu, was actually buried over there. We're coming back to that. The second reason is David HaMelech. King David himself was born over here. He lived in Beit Lechem. We hear David Bet HaLachmi is from Bethlehem. So this is where he was born. In fact, if you look at the road coming up on our right-hand side, he took this road down into Emek HaElah, the Elah Valley. There, he was taking snacks for his brothers who were fighting against the Plishtim, the Philistines. On our left-hand side, again, is Beit Lechem, and we said it's important for 2 reasons. The other reason is Rachel, our mother. Why is Rachel not buried with all the matriarchs and patriarchs in Hebron? Hebron is the second holiest city only because all the matriarchs and patriarchs are buried over there. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Leah, all of them except for Rachel. Why is Rachel not buried in Marat HaMachpelah in the double cave in Hebron, but rather buried over here in Beit Lechem. And the answer the Gemara gives is that just before Rachel died, she had prophecy. Although the temple wasn't built yet, she saw its destruction. She said, I don't want to be buried half a day's journey outside of Jerusalem. You see, the Jewish people have a soul. Our soul is Yerushalayim Mirakodesh. And she said, I want to be buried right near Jerusalem, so that when the Jews are being kicked out into Galut, they are being kicked out into exile, I want them to see my tomb. And when they see my tomb, they know, according to the verse, that I'm up in heaven. What is Rachel doing up in heaven? Rachel is crying for her children. Rachel mevaka al baneha. And in the merit of her tears, it says one verse later, Veshavu vanim ligvulam, her children are going to come back home. This area was captured in the 6-Day War in 1967, and that is what we are commemorating today. Yom Yerushalayim, the 6-Day War, returning to our roots, returning to our homeland. Guys, on our left-hand side is Efrat. Very unusual. Efrat was started by a very special man, Rabbi Shlomo Riskin. He was the rabbi of Lincoln Square in New York. He decided to make Aliyah. Nearly half his community came with him. In the 80s, they helped start Efrat. You should know that Rabbi Riskin not only started Efrat, but also was the founder of Or Torah Stone OTS, the umbrella organization for our special needs yeshiva, Yeshivat Darkaynu. Guys, we're traveling south. You can see the beautiful vineyards. Shivat Haminim are so beautiful over here. The 7 holy species to the land of Israel. We're talking about the olive trees, the gorgeous grapevines, the terraces that go back 2,000 years. On our right-hand side coming up is probably one of the most important towns. This is Elazar. Not so important. I live here. Unfortunately, at this bus stop on our left was a terrible terrorist attack. A brother and a sister were injured in that attack. Please, let us all pray for Nachum Elimelech Rafael ben Zahava Rivka and Noam Aliza bat Zahava Rivka. Carrying on, and you can see on our right, Elazar, on our left-hand side, we have Efrat, and we're traveling towards the central junction of the Gush Etzion. You can see Rabbi Riskin's yeshiva over there on the side. That's a Hesder yeshiva, combining students that serve in the army and also learn on the highest level. We are now coming up to the central junction of the Gush Etzion. Just left of the junction, you can see a cluster of trees, a beautiful forest. That forest is called Oz V'Gaon, actually a forest made in the memory of the 3 boys who were kidnapped and murdered not even 1 mile from this very junction. That forest, Oz V'Gaon, means strength and greatness. Gaon is also an acronym for Gilad, Eyal and Naphtali, the 3 boys that were kidnapped and murdered. This happened 6 years ago. Because this is such a central junction, unfortunately over the years we've seen many terrorist attacks. The most recent terrorist attack that was lethal was a friend of mine, Ari Fold. If you look on our left hand side, Rami Levi over there, Chet Tishrei, 2 days before the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, before Yom Kippur, Ari was going shopping for Sudat Mafseket, where he unfortunately was stabbed in the back and killed by a terrorist. On our left hand side is the central command of the Gush Etzion. This is not just a small army base, the main central command. That's where I serve on a counter terrorism unit. It has infantry intelligence unit, medics, mechanic workshop. On our left hand side, the fields over here are Jewish fields. Just on the other side is actually a very friendly Palestinian town called Khirbat Zakaria. I've got some friends who live in that town over here in Khirbat Zakaria. On our right hand side is Alon Shvut, and we're going to be talking about Alon Shvut very soon. Unfortunately, we've come to a very sad junction. Now, this is the junction of the 3 boys. It was at this very spot 6 years ago where the 3 boys were kidnapped and murdered. They were waiting at the bus stop when terrorists dressed as ultra-Orthodox Jews in a stolen Israeli car came to this bus stop, and at this bus stop they were standing and the boys got in, and we know that it took us 18 days until we found those boys. The whole world jury were praying. Please look in front of us on our right. You can see the memorial spot where it says Rachel Mevakar Banea, Rachel is crying for the children. Right over here on our right hand side is the actual bus stop where they were standing 6 years ago when they were picked up on that fateful night. On our left hand side coming up is Counter Terrorism. This was one of the original towns that existed pre-1948. Pre-1948, we're talking in the 1943. In this area there was British control. The people that started, the Jewish settlers that came over here to make Counter Terrorism were Holocaust survivors. They were able to escape Nazi Germany. They came over here and created 4 beautiful kibbutzim, agricultural towns, and this was the most important one. This is Counter Terrorism, and this is where it all began.
Hi guys, my name is Steve Gar. I'm the Associate Director of Yeshivat Darkaynu. I also serve on an elite counter terrorism unit in the area, the first response to terrorism that happens here in the Gush Etzion, just south of Yerushalayim. Through OTS, or Torah Stone, I completed a few of my exams in my smicha. This area is where I live with my family. Guys, we're standing at the bunker. In the War of Independence in 1948, this was the communications bunker used by the Jewish defenders fighting against the Jordanian Legion that was attacking Yerushalayim. Here in this bunker, because it being underground, secured, that if there was a mortar attack or bombardment, they made this into a makeshift hospital. They brought the Jewish defenders that were wounded down into this hospital and used it as a safe place for them to be. Unfortunately, this was where a grenade was thrown, and all the wounded soldiers, the communications officers were all killed in this bunker. Who are these soldiers? Let's go back to 1943. In 1943, Jews are escaping Nazi Germany. They're fleeing, they come to the land of Israel, the promised land. Over here, they are Holocaust survivors. They set up 4 beautiful kibbutzim, Revadim, Masot Yitzchak, Ein Tzurim, and the main one, Counter Terrorism. That's where we are now. Beautiful communities made up of agriculture. They started after a few years seeing the success that they enjoyed over here. They brought over the children, and it was a bustling community. Unfortunately, this came to a halt in 1948. The British were in control over here, and the British, as they were pulling out, we asked, the Jews said, can we, if you're leaving, we want the land of Israel. As they're pulling out, the surrounding Arab countries said, no, we want the land of Israel. The British tried with a partition plan, saying, we'll give some parts to the Arabs, some parts to the Jews. Ultimately, the Jews agreed to partition plan. The Arab countries surrounding us said no. That set the scene for the breaking out of the War of Independence in 1948. May 14th, 1948, when the British were pulling out, this is where we had a stronghold of Jews. The High Command, the IDF, did not exist at this time, but the High Command, made up of Haganah units, said to the Jews living over here, you are isolated. There is no ways that you'll be able to defend this area. So what happened was, they said evacuate. The Jews said no. We ran away, we fled our homes in Europe. We are not leaving the Arei Yehuda, the Judean cities, these Judean hills. We are staying put. They evacuated the children and the women. 60 children were evacuated. Most of the women that were married left except for Tzipora Rosenfeld. She sent her son, Yossi, with Chaviva, a friend of hers, to Yerushalayim. She stayed and fought side by side over here. This area was important. To understand the significance, everyone knows the way you conquer a country is by taking over the capital city. Everyone knows the heart and soul of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, is Jerusalem. This war of independence was centered around Jerusalem. Whoever held on to Jerusalem militarily would be the rulers of the whole of Israel. The Jews in these hills said, we're going to be the southern gate of Yerushalayim. If they want to reach Jerusalem, to bombard it, to attack, they have to come through us. They set up over here sandbags, they set up bunkers, making sure that we can defend ourselves from an attack from the south. When the War of Independence broke out, Jerusalem was being attacked from all sides. From up north, all the Arab countries had got together. They were attacking from the east. Just to understand, the Jewish defenders over here had nothing. No training, no equipment, handmade bullets, handmade guns. We didn't have a single tank, but we fought against all the surrounding Arab countries that were well organized, well equipped, well trained, uniforms and tanks, airplanes. These Jews didn't stand a chance, but they fought like lions in these hills. Unfortunately, here in Counter Terrorism, 127 defenders were killed. 240 in all the areas of the Gush Etzion, the southern gate of Yerushalayim. 240 defenders fell. In fact, in Counter Terrorism, the Jews that had surrendered, the Jewish defenders were brought. They said, we want to take a picture. They gathered them in and then opened machine gun fire, slaughtering them. Just to understand, we fought like lions, but we lost. Counter Etzion fell. But you should know, the very next day after Counter Etzion fell, all Arab countries that were involved in the War of Independence surrendered. The very next day was the first time in 2,000 years we had a Jewish state. David Ben-Gurion got up to speak and he says, this is probably the happiest day in 2,000 years. That we finally have the land of Israel run by a Jewish government. But he said it's also a sad day. Please think of those 60 orphans that received the news last night that their fathers, Yossi received the news that his mother was killed in combat. If you're standing in Israel that belongs to the Jewish people, we need to give thanks to these 240 soldiers, these men that gave their lives. To understand the significance of this place, Counter Terrorism was codenamed the Queen. It was given that name because we know in chess, the most important piece on the chessboard is the king. You lose the king, you lose the chess game. But the most powerful piece on a chessboard is the queen. Strategically, Counter Terrorism was the most important position in the War of Independence in 1948. It's a technique in chess. I played with my son. It's called a queen sacrifice. You let your opponent take your queen, but the very next move, checkmate, you take their king. We lost Counter Terrorism. Hamalka Nafla came over the radio, one of the most powerful phrases in Israeli modern history. The queen has fallen. But the very next day, we had a Jewish state, the first time in 2,000 years. These men and women sacrificed their life over here. One of the soldiers, a communication officers in this bunker, her name was Eliza, a Haganah fighter. She came out of the bunker understanding that Counter Terrorism was going to fall, that the queen would fall. She came out of the bunker. She wanted to destroy the antenna. She was caught by a Jordanian legionnaire. He led her back to the bunker and told her to throw a grenade. She knew who was down here, the communications officers, the wounded Jewish defenders. She refused. The Jordanian Legion threw grenade after grenade into this bunker. Every soldier knows that when a grenade hits the ground, it has 3 seconds before it explodes. What do you do in those 3 seconds? There's nowhere to run. This is a bunker. Shir la'malot mimamakim kraticha Hashem. From the depths I call out to Hashem. Hashem shema b'koli. Hashem, listen to my voice. Save us. I really believe Hashem heard their cry. Because 19 years later, the soldiers that died in this bunker, their children came back. To understand, after the War of Independence, in our agreement with the surrender, this became Transjordan. Jews didn't live over here. The Jordanians moved in. They destroyed anything that was Jewish. They burnt down Jewish homes. They burnt down Jewish shuls. They burnt anything that we had, kindergartens, even the farms. When the children of these defenders who were evacuated in 48, they gathered along the border and they looked into Transjordan, they looked into the area where they were born. They couldn't recognize anything except for a beautiful oak tree. The lone oak tree stood on the hilltop. They made a promise. These young children said, one day we're going to return to that oak tree. Their dream came true 19 years later, because these children who were evacuated in 1948, 4 or 5 years old, 19 years later, in the Six-Day War in 1967, they were the soldiers fighting in the Six-Day War that achieved that we got back Yerushalayim, we got back the Gush Etzion, we actually got up all the way to the Ramat HaGolan, we reached Damascus. We said, what are we doing over here? We don't want Syria as well. We came back to our borders that we know today. It's because of these young soldiers with their dream that they came back. Their fathers died in this bunker. The children came back and recaptured this land that belonged to the Jews. V'shavu vanim ligvulam, and our children are going to come back home. We said that coming in. Rachel mevakal banea, Rachel feels the pain of all of her children. I really believe Hashem heard the cry of these soldiers in the bunker. Shema b'koli, listen to my voice. He heard, because 19 years later the children came back and re-established this area. V'hu yifdet Yisrael mikol avonotav. The psalm ends by us saying, and he will redeem Israel from all of their sins. You should understand, we don't have 4 Jewish towns. Now, 53 years later, we have over 24 Jewish towns, over 120,000 Jews living here in the Gush Etzion. We've come home. We've got agriculture, one of the biggest yeshivot that combine serving in the military and learning Torah. We have our special needs yeshiva, Yeshivat Darkaynu, where students come from all over the world to study, because they want also the opportunity to learn in the Holy Land. We have infrastructure. It is flourishing. And it's all thanks to those original soldiers who fought and died here in 1948. It's an honor for me to serve here on a counter-terrorism unit, because I'm walking in the footsteps of these incredible Jewish defenders. They didn't have the training we had. They don't have our equipment. The head commander, a lieutenant colonel of the central command of the Gush Etzion, a religious Jew, David Shapira, he calls this central command the southern gate of Yerushalayim. It's an honor that I can protect the holiest city in Israel, that we are able to say that if you want to get to Yerushalayim, you have to come through us. This is our job. We have to give thanks to these 240 Jewish defenders who, against all odds, fought the Jordanian Legion, and we have in Israel, thanks to them. Thus spoke our first Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion. Join me on top of this reconstructed German monastery to get perspective of what we're talking about in the War of Independence and the Six-Day War in 1967.
ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים, ושבו בנים לגאולה.
Remember, in 1948, this area would belong to the Jordanians. The Jordanians burnt anything down to the ground. So we reconstructed this German monastery. Below us is the actual bunker where the Jewish defenders fell when the grenade hit the floor, and that was the War of Independence 1948. Let's understand where we are. South of us in that direction is Hebron, the second holiest city in Israel. That way to our north is Jerusalem. The modern highway connecting them is the main highway, road number 60, the tunnel road. A small portion of the ancient highway is still intact just behind Alon Shvut. Behind us is Alon Shvut. Remember, in 1948, there were only 4 Jewish towns that existed over here: Masuot Yitzhak, Revadim, Ein Tzurim, and the main one where we're standing right now is Kfar Etzion. For 19 years, this area lay desolate. But 19 years later, in 1967, in the Six-Day War, the children who lost their fathers in these hills returned. They came back. Remember, they were yearning to go back to that lone oak tree, just next to Behind where I'm pointing, there's a forest. In that forest, you'll be able to see the lone tree. It's no longer alone. There are other trees with it, which is very beautiful and symbolic. Their dream was to return to that tree. Their dream came true when the children of Counter Terrorism returned home to these hills, the Judean hills. To return is Lashuv, an oak tree. Now the symbolism of this oak tree, that this was the central meeting spot in 1948 for the 4 Jewish towns. Some of these children have memories, sitting under that oak tree having a picnic. They remember swinging on their branches. They swore one day we will return to our oak tree. An oak tree in Hebrew is called an alon. To return, lashuv, shvut, alon shvut is returning to the oak tree. If you look just to the right of that forest area, you will see the city of Alon Shvut, created by the 60 orphans coming home. This area is very beautiful. Over there is the yeshiva, the Hesder Yeshiva, where they combine serving in the army and learning Torah. I got very emotional in my Sheva Brachot. I studied in this yeshiva. I was married in Yerushalayim, a boy from South Africa to a young lady from Canada. But our Sheva Brachot were over here. My emotion was when sitting at Sheva Brachot, my friends, my family singing the beautiful verse that I'm sure you all know, Od Yishama Ba'arei Yehuda U'v'chotzot Yerushalayim Kol Sason V'kol Simcha Kol Chatan V'kol Kala. One day you're going to be hearing the rejoicing of a bride and a groom. Where? In the Judean hills. I'm sitting next to the most beautiful bride in the world, and we're singing and rejoicing. This is a prophecy coming true. We are living the words of the prophet. V'shavu vanim ligvulam. We are coming back to our own homes. The children will return to their homeland. This was due to the fact of 1967, the 6-Day War, when we returned back to our homeland. Where our fathers have fell, the sons are returning. Remember, as we discussed coming into the Gush Etzion, David HaMelech, King David himself, was born just down the road in Bethlehem, Beit Lechem, Beit HaLachmi. He was born over there. He was a shepherd. Down underneath in the bunker, we talked about Psalm 130, Kuf Lamed, and we said from the depths they called out to Hashem. It is very possible. David HaMelech, a shepherd, was sitting on one of these terraces. While his sheep were grazing, he was composing some of the Tehillim, some of the Psalms. We're in a very special place. You know what gives me so much joy is to see and hear their grandchildren, some of them great-grandchildren, playing in these hills. The men and women who gave their lives defending this area in 1948 now have their great-grandchildren playing in the fields, in the parks. V'shavu vanim ligvulam. Our children have come home.
Many broken-hearted friends lost and departed. Please, no more. Now the time has come. Everyone must stand together and be strong forevermore.
Hi everyone, it's Yaakov Shweki, and I'm happy to join you at this beautiful Yom Yerushalayim event. You know, Yom Yerushalayim is such a special day, and Yerushalayim, of course, holds a real dear place in everybody's hearts, Jews all over the world. But Yom Yerushalayim is especially a big day for Saadya Ehrenpreis. It was his birthday. I understand that Saadya was a very special young man who lived life fully. He lived life fully because he loved learning Torah in Yeshivat Darkaynu in Gush Etzion. My friend Steve Gar. Who's like Steve Gar? Special. But Saadya was a remarkable person who had a deep love for Torah. And his life was cut short way too soon from this coronavirus that's going around. So sing with me this song. I know we don't have the great band behind me, but this is the song because we wish for that day very soon when we'll cry no more. Cry no more, Yerushalayim, oh, shine once more, Yerushalayim. We need to see you proud again upon the mountain of Hashem. I hope you guys are all singing. And then we'll cry, no more Yerushalayim. You know, this song is Cry No More Yerushalayim. On Yom Yerushalayim, we wish for that day that Yerushalayim is proud again where it's supposed to be. B'ezrat Hashem, we should have Yom Yerushalayim, a complete Yom Yerushalayim. Amen v'amen v'Mashiach Tzidkenu.
Being Yeshiva, we changed my life.
Cry no more Yerushalayim. Oh, shine once more Yerushalayim. We need to see you proud again upon the mountain of Hashem. And then we'll cry no more Yerushalayim.
We mentioned as we were coming into the Gush Etzion, this is Tzomet Hanarim, the junction of the three boys. It's at this junction the boys were last seen when they were kidnapped. This is just below Yeshivat Darkaynu, where I studied, did Hesder. This is also where we have our special needs yeshiva, Yeshivat Darkaynu. It's at this junction the boys were waiting to go home. They were in yeshiva for 2 weeks. They wanted to go home a Thursday evening, wanted to eat mom's cooking, to sleep in their own beds. It's at this stage, terrorists that were driving around for 2.5 hours in an Israeli car, dressed up as ultra-Orthodox Jews. They targeted these three young men. At this very bus stop, they were waiting when the car pulled up. They got inside. Very soon after getting inside, the boys realized they were just dressed up and these were actual terrorists. One of the boys managed to get a phone call out to the emergency center. Unfortunately, he couldn't complete his call. The line went dead after a few seconds after wrestling and getting the phone away from him. We know, analyzing that phone call, that very soon after the boys were kidnapped, they were actually killed. For 18 days we searched for them. On the Friday morning, I arrived at this bus stop with my unit. The boys had already been kidnapped the night before. We were asked to help out to search in the nearby forest, just on the other side of the school district. This is where 3 of my children go to school. On the other side there's a beautiful forest. We're told to search inside that forest. You're not allowed to search at nighttime. Nighttime you search, you could disturb a clue. So every night we placed a flag with this very thin metal lining and placed it into the ground, marking our last spot. And as the sun was setting, I would go to where I normally go, to do Daf Yomi with my small group of men in Efrat. As I pulled up to the Beit Midrash, I saw that the lights were off. I thought maybe it was an electric short out. I tried the door, it was locked. I got angry. 3 of our children are missing. We're on the verge of war with the Hamas. This is the time we need to learn Torah. This is the time where we need God's help. I tried the door again and I saw there was a note. The note said we moved. The men that I normally do Daf Yomi had set up a table at this bus stop. They were using the street lights to learn the daf that was on the table. You see, they understood something very special. People who care come closer. They could have learned anywhere in the world, but they chose to learn here, so that maybe in the merit of their tefillot, in the merit of their Torah, these boys would be returned back to their families safely. Unfortunately, that wasn't to be. But thanks to a tremendous effort from the search and rescue military and volunteers, these boys were found, and their parents were able to give them a burial that they deserved and to say Kaddish, the mourner's prayer for losing a loved one. That principle, people who care come closer. I'm so happy that you were able to join me in this spot on such a special day on Yom Yerushalayim, that you are able to be here with us, celebrating, being in Eretz Israel. There are ups, there are downs. We have sad times and there are happy times. But what's so beautiful about the family of Am Yisrael is that families stay together when times are good. But family are there together when times are tough. People who care come closer. Thank you for being close with us during this very special day.
at this very special spot.
Rachel, Rachel, mevakar, mevakar, al baneha. Kol berama, berama nishma. Rachel, Rachel, mevakar, mevakar. Rachel, Rachel, Rachel mevakar, Rachel mevakar, Rachel mevakar, al baneha. Rachel, Rachel, Rachel mevakar. Rachel mevakar, Rachel mevakar, baneha. Kol berama, berama nishma. Rachel, Rachel, mevakar, mevakar, al baneha. Rachel, Rachel, Rachel mevakar, Rachel mevakar, Rachel mevakar, al baneha. Rachel mevakar, Rachel mevakar, Rachel mevakar, al baneha.
Unfortunately, this junction has seen so much pain. Not only the kidnapping and murder of the 3 boys, but Dalia Lemkes, a young lady, was killed on the other side of the road at that bus stop. Every single time I come to my beloved yeshiva, I'm reminded of the pain and suffering that happened over here. This spot is a memorial to remember the lives of 3 very special boys. We have a sign that says Rachel mevakar baneha. Rachel, Mother Rachel, is crying for her children. As the mother of all of Israel, she feels the pain of every kid. Naftali Frankel, a 16-year-old boy, was one of the 3 boys kidnapped. He was learning in the school just down the road in Makor Chaim. Thursday night he was kidnapped. There's double meaning when it says Rachel mevakar baneha. Rachel is weeping for her children. Not only Mother Rachel, but Racheli Frankel, she is weeping for her son Naftali, who didn't come home that night. Very soon after the mourning period, Racheli Frankel agreed to do an interview. I was horrified by the question the interviewer asked her. He said to Racheli, "Are you angry with God?" She said, "I don't understand the question." He said, "I will explain. You are a religious Jewess. You keep Shabbat. You cover your hair, you pray 3 times a day, you send your boy to a religious school, Vagita bo yomam valayla, and you will learn day and night. And how does God repay you? For being such a good Jewess, for keeping so many of the mitzvot. He allows a terrorist to take your young boy and allowed him to be kidnapped and murdered. Aren't you angry with God? You do so much for him, couldn't he have helped you out?" Racheli said, I understand the question. She said, I want you to know that every Jewish mother has got a dream for their little boys. Some moms want their boys to grow up to be lawyers, businessmen, maybe a doctor, maybe to become a rabbi. She said, my Naftali is never going to go to medical school. He's never going to get his smicha. None of that will be able to happen. She said, but you know, when my son was kidnapped, the love that I felt from world Jewry, Jewish communities I didn't even know existed, were reaching out to me, telling me that they were praying for my speedy return of my son. They were praying for his well-being. It didn't matter what kind of Jew. An Ashkenazi or a Sfaradi, ultra-Orthodox, modern Orthodox, Reform, all Jews came together. She said, I don't remember a time where there was so much achdut, there was so much unity among the nation of Israel. She said, and that was caused by my son. I don't know of a single rabbi, a single businessman, a single doctor that has the power to bring the whole nation of Israel together. But my son Naftali, at the age of 16, achieved achdut for Am Yisrael. Not only, she said, am I not angry with God, I want to say thank you to the Ribono Shel Olam, the master of the universe. Thank you for making me the mother of the boy who brought unity to the nation of Israel. It's an honor. You see, when we stand together, where we feel each other's pain, when we look out for one another, that's when the pain becomes bearable. So this Yom Yerushalayim, let's turn the pain into rejoicing. We are here, we are in our land, we have returned to Jerusalem, we have returned to the Arei Yehuda, we are here to sing and rejoice. So don't let COVID-19 bring you down. If you are in your own living rooms, in your own homes, let's dance like you've never danced before, celebrating Yerushalayim. And let's hope and pray that next year we'll be celebrating and dancing in Jerusalem itself. L'shana haba'a b'Yerushalayim. Next year in Jerusalem.
Kolot balevav penima nefesh Yehudi homiya ulefatei mizrach kadima ayin letzion tzofia odnom datikvatenu hatikva mat shnot apayim להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים להיות עם חופשי